Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. Today I want to finish a UFO, but for a very particular reason. Throughout the year, my quilt guild makes charity quilts, ABC quilts for babies. But once a year we all come together with some quilt tops for this charity and sew up the quilt tops, bind them so that they're all kind of done at the same time together, and then they can be delivered. So that date is coming up and I need some quilt tops. I do have this bag my friend gave me. Isn't that a fun beach bag? I do have this bag that has a work in progress baby quilt that I was working on specifically for a charity quilt for a baby. And then I kind of just got busy and distracted and moved on to other things, but I thought this would be perfect to finish. I may even have more than one project going in here. I can't totally remember what's in this bag. I have a pretty good sense, but let's go ahead. Let's take a look what's in here, see what pieces we can put together and see if we can make a quilt top. Okay, let's see here. I think I have two kind of similar projects. One that was more kind of okay. So I have these squares, and I think I have some squares that were supposed to go in kind of a quilt that you would typically consider a boy quilt, though obviously any quilts can be for any gender. And then these squares here are more feminine. And I think, let's see, how big are these squares? All right, these are 6-inch squares. And then these actually all came from a specific project separately, a quilt that I had finished for my cousin. So let's see, we have two kind of piles here, and I think that the feminine one is the one that we're gonna be working on today. All right, here's the piece that I really remember that's gonna kind of be the center of this quilt. And it's this heart. Now you may remember this heart because I did a tutorial way back in the day called Heart Pillow Fail, because this was supposed to be a pillow, a heart pillow around Valentine's Day. It's actually one of my favorite videos. It was a complete disaster, but it was kind of fun. So I had some of these hearts. I had 3 of these hearts, and one of them got put into a pillow. A second one I already put into a quilt, and then this third one I appliqued onto this pink piece of fabric. So I have this, and I think I want this to kind of be the center of the baby quilt. Very scrappy, obviously. So we have this. Let's put this aside. And these are the other pieces I remember. These are all 5.5 inches square, and they're like these scrappy blocks. And so let's get a closer look at these. Okay, so these are all 5.5 inches. They're all of these just, you know, scrappy blocks. And I was thinking that maybe what I could do is put a little border around each one of these blocks and then put the blocks surrounding the heart in the middle is the idea. So these were really fun to make. I don't know how many I have. I'll count at the end. This was nursery rhyme fabric. What is this? The Cat and the Fiddle or whatever. And then a little bird peeking through. So let's see. How many of these do I have? 1, 2, 12. There's another nursery rhyme fabric, the Humpty Dumpty. Okay, 12, and then I have these pieces that haven't even been ironed open, but that could be cut into squares. So I have a bunch of these. Let me make a pile of those. And then these are the ones that are a little bit more, that have started to be pieced, that are what we would typically consider in our society to be more masculine, though obviously, as I said, any baby can love any kind of colors or things or whatever. But these would all be separate. These would be a separate quilt. And then I have a bunch of these pieced squares that would go in the other quilt. So these ones are squared off to also be 5.5 inches. So that's separate. I'm gonna put those aside. Let's see what else is in this bag. It looks like the rest of this is just kind of pieces of yardage. So what I think I wanna do is find some fabric to be a border around these, put a border around, then see how many will go on each side of the heart, get some background, and then see what I want to do next, kind of take it from there. I do have this yellow, which could work nicely if we kind of take a look at it against the edge of our heart here. That could match kind of well. It's a little subtle for kind of a border, so I do also have this one, which might be a little bit much. Let's see. Here's a little piece. So I kind of like both for different reasons. Let's get a closer look. So, let's maybe change the block and see what else we have here. Like this one. It definitely pops more against the polka dot. Like for example, this yellow here probably would totally get lost there. It would. Let's do the polka dot just for some fun. And maybe I'll do a very thin border of the polka dot. I have my 12 scrap blocks here with the border. I do want to kind of lay these blocks out around the heart, but before I do that, I want to trim this heart. There's kind of a lot of pink fabric here, as you can see. So I'd like to trim that a little bit and then add a border. And I'm thinking the border I'd like to add are these cute foxes. Aren't those adorable? And I think I do have enough of this to go all the way around. So I'm going to trim this, add the borders, and then we'll take a look at these little scrap blocks kind of around the heart. Here's the heart with the borders on it. I think it looks pretty good. And then I have my 12 scrappy blocks here. I'm not totally sold on this border fabric that I chose with the quilt, but I think it may be okay. We'll see how it goes. What I want to do is kind of put these out, lay these out around the heart and see if we need more. I actually do have a bunch of these blocks partially made, so I could finish some more if I need extra ones, but let's take a look. Let's lay them out and take a look. I have my 12 pieces laid out around the edge, and then I've put some choices of background fabric on each side. In terms of the number of squares that I need, I need 2 more, I think. Yes, so if I put if I put 2 on the sides and then 3 on the top and bottom, and then have 1 in each corner, I would need 2 more. So I think I'm going to create 2 more, and then I need to choose my background fabric. I'm kind of leaning towards this one here, and I'm wondering if I fussy cut the pieces in between each block, if I could kind of fussy cut a rose in between each one. But let's get a closer look at these fabrics. I also think I am going to put a very thin, like 1-inch strip of this pink around the outside of the fox fabric. And so this is the fabric I'm leaning towards for the background. But we also could do kind of a blue, which is really sweet. Or this is kind of a green. It's like a very, very light green. It's almost too light for my taste. I kind of want a little bit of a pop in the background. And then this is another blue floral up there. So I do think I'm going to go with that rose fabric. Let's cut out that extra border, maybe some pieces of the rose, and see how that's looking. So I've had a drastic change in direction here. I just wasn't feeling like those scrap squares with the yellow border were going well with this block. I did add the border, the pink border along the edge, which I love. And I think what I'm going to do, if you remember from the beginning of the video, I had these 5.5-inch squares. And I think I'm going to put a line of them on the top of the block and the bottom of the block to give it some length. And then at that point, I may just put a border on it. We'll see. But with the other squares, I think I'm going to, let me show you what I'm going to do with the other squares. But I will end up, I think, with 2 quilt tops, which is kind of an unexpected bonus. I'm just auditioning them with some background fabric here, but I think I'm just going to line them up 4 across by 4 down, so I'll need 16 blocks. I do have to make an extra couple of them, which is not a problem. I think I'm going to go with kind of this purplish fabric down here. This is what this fabric looks like, which I think will go nicely. So, and that will basically be the quilt. I mean, I may add a border, but it'll be the 4 by 4. Here's where we're at with the heart quilt. These pieces along the bottom and the top, the squares are sewn together, but I still need to sew them to the body of the quilt. And then I think I'm going to do this strip of this stripy pink and blue and white stripe at just the top and the bottom only. And then I'll do a border of that floral to go all the way around. Now we are getting a little bit on the big side for a baby quilt. I haven't measured it, but I think it'll be okay. I like to make my baby quilts a little bit bigger because it ages with the child and they can get more use out of it. Though, in terms of the Guild guidelines, I think this is going to be bigger than that, so I'll have to check with them about their usability. But if it doesn't go specifically for the ABC charity, there are a lot of places that I could donate this to, but I think it'll be fine. Plus, you know, things will tighten up once with seam allowance, and this is a bigger strip than I think I'll do. I think I'll make a smaller strip of this here. I have my quilt finished. We'll take a closer look in a second. I also have my other quilt top done. This quilt is fully complete, including binding and quilting. But what I did, instead of adding an extra border, as you remember before, I had this stripe just on the bottom and the top, and was going to add a big kind of floral border around the whole thing. But instead of doing that, I just extended that stripy border around the whole piece, and then that was it, which made it a nice size. And aesthetically, I think it works well. But let's get a closer look here. I'll tell you what I did for the quilting. Typically, as you know, I usually just do the stitch in the ditch. And I did do something different, which I don't love, which is kind of echoing along the outside of the seam lines. And it just looks a little sloppier to me. I always find that the stitch in the ditch just really makes things look clean and have the different pieces of the quilt pop. So I'm not sure that I would do that again, but let's get a look at the border here. I think it's just a really sweet piece of fabric. It's a vintage piece that I've had for a long time. And then of course the little bunny squares are super cute. For the quilting on the inside of the heart, I just, for many of these lines, quilted stitch in the ditch along these lines randomly. Not every single one, but just enough to really secure it down, and then did that echo around the full heart. The binding is the same fabric as that little small border in the background behind the heart there, which I think kind of ties everything nicely together. The whole quilt is flannel front and back. Same with the other quilt top that I made that we'll look at in a second. That one is all flannel, so it's super cozy. You know, is it my favorite thing I've ever made? No. You know, I don't love this quilt, but I like it. I like it a lot. I think that some baby will really love it, and I'm really happy that I made it. So let's take a look at the other quilt top. This is just a top, no batting or backing yet, and then as you can see, it needs to be trimmed along the edges to square it off. But I love this quilt so much. I just love everything about it. I love the background fabric. I love the yellowy orangey squares, borders. I love the blocks themselves. Let's take a closer look at the blocks. So some of them, like this one, aren't too scrappy. It's just kind of these two pieces of fabric put together, but then other ones, like this one, are pretty heavily pieced. So even like this little piece down, teeny tiny piece down in the corner. And I tried to kind of mix that up where every other one is you know, not too pieced and then very much pieced like that. But I do really like these squares, and you know, I might just keep doing this with my flannel pieces, is just sewing them together, squaring them off, and then using them to make, you know, ABC quilts or baby quilts of some kind, because they're adorable. And it reminds me of all of the projects where these pieces had come from. For a time, I was making baby booties, selling baby booties, and they were actually pretty successful. People really liked them and bought them, and I priced them well. So I have a lot of these like novelty, cute baby print fabrics from when I used to make those baby booties. But now I'm really only wanting to make quilts. I have no interest in making other baby related things. I have a lot of this fabric, which is the different nursery rhymes. What is that nursery rhyme? I can't remember. But here's like Humpty Dumpty down there. So really fun. There's two more blocks. Here's one with the beautiful bird, and then this other very scrappy one. For this one, I think I am going to hand stitch, do the big stitch hand quilting. I kind of just want to experiment with that a little bit. I do love the background, so I don't want to lose too much of that in the stitching, but I think the big stitch will be nice on this quilt. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.